Hello, this video will be on absolute value equations only. I think I'm going to make another video for the inequalities part because I think it might take too long to do both of them. So we'll see how it works out. Most likely there'll be two videos here. Um, so first of all, I'll remind you the absolute value symbol means whatever was inside of the symbol, you make it positive. So we'll start off with something very simple. Absolute value of x equals 3. The thing about an absolute value is you don't know whether what's in here is a positive or negative because the symbol changes it to positive. So in this case, once we remove the absolute value symbol, the x could have been a 3, or it could have also been a negative 3. Okay, so this is going to tie in the lesson from 3.6 to absolute values and absolute value equations, and also to absolute value inequalities in the next video. So it's important here to understand that we're not only going to isolate this variable, but before we do that, we're going to isolate the absolute value, like in the case of this equation. So we have this unknown f here, but before we even get to that, we have this unknown absolute value. So I'd like you to pretend for a moment that the absolute value is the thing we need to isolate first. That's the unknown we're looking for. So this whole thing we need to figure out or isolate first. So to do that, we're just going to add 2 to both sides to isolate that absolute value. So now we end up with 4f plus 1 in absolute value is going to equal 7. Now just like when we did the and or statement in the last video, this is going to end up being an or statement because this 4f plus 1 could equal 7. But because of this absolute value symbol that we are now taking away, it could have been equal to negative 7. Okay, so that's why an absolute value gives us an or statement similar to the last video. Now once you have your or statement, it's very simple, and we've done these problems 100 times at this point. So once we get here, it's just like you would remember. 4f equals 6. Divide both sides by 4. And we end up with f, oops, make some room here. F equals 6 over 4, or 3 over 2, or 1.5. And if we plug it in, it'll work. So 3 over 2, let's try it out. 3 over 2 times 4 would be 6, plus 1 would be 7, minus 2 would be 5. So that works. But we have to also do this one over here. So 4f plus 1 equals negative 7 as well. So if we subtract 1 from both sides, we're going to end up with 4f is equal to negative 8. And then we're going to divide both sides by, whoops, not 2, by 4. And we're going to end up with f equals negative 2. So we're going to plug that in over here. So 4 times negative 2 would have been negative 8. Plus 1 would have been negative 7, but then when you take the absolute value, you get 7 minus 2 equals 5. So both of these answers are perfectly acceptable, and if we were to graph it, it's actually more than acceptable. You would have to show both answers to answer this question properly. So let's put a 0, a 1, and a 2, and then we have a negative 1 and a negative 2. So in order to properly answer this question, you would have to put a dot here for negative 2 and a dot at 1.5, right? That's if we were to graph it. You don't have to graph all of these, but if you were asked to, you would get 2 points. So that's how you do that. Again, if you were not asked to graph it, you could just leave it with those 2 answers with an or statement in between. F equals 3 over 2 or f equals negative 2. That reminds me, back here we didn't graph it, so if we were to graph it, pretty simple. We got a negative 3 over here, a 3 over here, and being that they're equals, we would put a solid dot there at 3, negative 3, and 3. So the answer is this, and if they wanted a picture or a graph, it would be that. All right, let's try one more of these. Again, instead of thinking about isolating the variable first, let's isolate the not the inequality, the absolute value. Then we'll get to the variable later. So to isolate the absolute value, we're going to add 5 to both sides. Add 5 to both sides. And we end up with the absolute value of 3x minus 6 is equal to negative 2. Okay. At this point, we can make our OR statement, but logically, when we get here, we have to pay attention to this. Now, the absolute value symbol over here says whatever happens is going to be positive. And this symbol over here is a negative symbol. So we know that this cannot be true ever, so it's no solution. Can never get a negative answer when you have an absolute value. So this would be an easy problem. But you do have to prove it this way by showing absolute value is equal to a negative and writing no solution. So I'm going to stop this video here, and then I'll start up a new video for inequalities. Thank you.